Hello and welcome to episode 40 of the Critical Twits Gaming Podcast. Today we're going to discuss deck building games from Dominion all the way up to Mystic Vale. Welcome back! I'm Brian Ennis.
I'm Aaron Ravinsky.
And I'm Joe Lewin.
And we are the Critical Twits. Today we're going to be talking about deck building games. Specifically, we're going to take you through a history of deck building games from the very first originator of the genre, Dominion, all the way through Arctic Scavengers, which put a neat little player versus player twist in, via last year's Cthulhu Realms, and ending up with a game that came out last month. I'm going to say last month because I've done my research.
Yeah.
Mystic Vale, which completely changes the way deck builders work, but does a bit, and it's quite good. Yes, so for those who are of an uncertain disposition, nervous and coy, and know nothing of what we speak, Aaron, what is a deck building game?
Well, for a start, you probably shouldn't call it a game.
Okay.
Because it's quite dangerous. But deck building, at least, is where you construct a wooden architecture. Now, the first thing you will need to do in any deck building game, if that's what you want to go down for, is lay out the area you want to build it for. Then you'll probably need some wood, some screws, hardware tools.
Do they build these decks out of things other than wood?
Well, I've seen some people do it with paving slab stuff. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. You know, it gets a bit weighty and it sinks under its own weight. Yes.
I thought a deck building was where you had a fist fight with an office block. Joe, what actually is a deck building game?
A deck building game is a game in which each player will start with a identical small deck of normally about 10 cards.
Yeah.
What you then do is you use those cards to generate some form of resource, which you use to buy other cards, which go into your discard pile. Once you've used all your pre-generated basic deck, everything gets shuffled about. So the cards you've bought go into your new deck, and you carry on playing. And each turn you will be trying to buy things to generate more resources, to buy more things. And in its basic terms, it's a card game where you do shopping that's themed.
Themed shopping card game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why didn't they call it a themed shopping card game? A TSCG,
Because
for sure.
the reason they didn't call them that is because it sounds ridiculous.
It does, doesn't it? Yes, very much so. Now, we've played quite a few deck builders.
We have.
We've played some of them quite often. We have played others of them not at all. That worked better in my head.
We won't be talking about those in great length, though, thankfully.
But they're a fairly new genre in the world of board games. Dominion was developed by Donald X. Vaccarino. Vaccarino.
That's an awesome name.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't help but think that if you want your offspring to become successful, you need to give them an X or a Z for their middle name. So, we've all played Dominion.
We have.
Two of us own it, and it's not me. That was a weird way of saying you two both own the game.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
But both us and our fans are used to your weird terminologies.
Yes, I like to inject the podcast with linguistic inventiveness. Yeah, Dominion 2008, Donald X. Vaccarino. You guys both own a copy.
Yep.
I think most board gaming collections, or board gaming groups at least, will have Dominion.
Yeah, it's become one of those staple games for a lot of groups. Yeah.
What do we think then? Just to start, I'm not going to linger on Dominion too long because it's been 8 years. People will move on to some of the newer stuff. But what do we think it was about Dominion and that style of game that has become so massively, massively popular?
Well, people like building decks for things like Magic the Gathering and Pokemon.
Yep.
And you're including that in its own little self-contained game.
Yeah.
It's quite simple. Dominion was nice for like depending on the personality types of your group.
Yes.
Because it's not got any real conflict in it.
Yeah.
It's like 4 people sitting there playing a single player game at the same time.
Yeah. It's that mechanical satisfaction. Like you said, it's going to depend on the game group and whether what they're looking for in a game and things like that. But knowing that you're doing one thing that will cascade onto another thing, that will work onto another thing, has got a very zen-like satisfaction to it as you're building up and things are working perfectly in your little system.
Yeah, it's all about crafting a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
You buy one of these cards and then that helps with this other card, and then these 2 abilities chain together.
Yeah.
So you might pick a lot of cards that generate lots of money or let you discard things, and then you take a card that if it's discarded it gives you something else, so that the abilities work in sync.
Yeah.
So I think for me I quite like deck builders as a puzzle.
Yes.
And I think one of the good things that Dominion does is it has a selection of different cards that change each time.
Yeah.
And there are loads and loads and loads and loads of expansions for Dominion.
Yes, which one of the things while we are on Dominion is the base game itself doesn't have that much interaction or conflict between players.
Yes.
That is added in expansions. There
Yeah.
are expansions that are much more allow you to play much more aggressively and start trying to mess with your opponent rather than just trying to make the better thing yourself.
Yeah.
Because vanilla Dominion is just medieval shopping.
There is apparently now over 200 different kingdom cards.
Yeah.
Over the various expansions, which apparently leads to 22 quadrillion different combinations for the initial setup
Nice.
of the game, because you take one card from each set and deal out a number in the middle, and then that changes what's available,
which is
for
a
you each
huge
time.
amount of replayability.
Yeah. But you'd have to have a lot of money to be able to get that by bit from one game.
Yeah,
Because they're about 30-40 quid a box.
they are.
Yeah.
And
But if you're really, really into it,
Yeah.
then you can keep adding new things in and go very, very deep. So yeah, I mean, we're not here to review Dominion.
No.
But more to give people an idea of what it's like if they're not sure, just to sort of recap it and sort of try to understand its popularity, I think.
yeah.
Well, that's the first of its kind. It was unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very good starting point for deck builders. Although I'd
Yeah.
argue there's probably better investments for you nowadays. I know things like Legendary and Versus are both deck builders, I believe.
Yeah, they're advertising that certainly.
So they might. I believe they're. I'm led to believe by our local hobby shop that they
Yeah.
are very good games. That might be a good place to start.
Yeah.
But if you like nice, non-aggressive,
If you're a Euro gamer,
yes, very much so. Dominion is very good.
yeah,
Yes. And one of the I'm not saying it is the first, but one of the first games to sort of add in a more directly interactive social element to the game was Arctic Scavengers, which originally came out in 2009. Last year, at the end of last year, 2015, they released the base game plus the 2 expansions in the same box, which is the version of the game that I have.
Which the 2 expansions are HQ and Recon.
Yes. And we played quite a bit of Dominion when we first got into deck building games.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at this is amazing, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Since I bought Arctic Scavengers, I haven't played Dominion.
I've not wanted to since.
I have, but only because
You don't own Arctic Scavengers?
possibly a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I find Dominion's quite a nice 2-player game. So again, it's quite nice to play with my wife. And again, because that lack of conflict, you can have that lack of conflict in its own work. So I've still come back to enjoy it. But
Yeah.
I like Arctic Scavengers more.
Yes. For me, it's added in a more overt style of conflict. Even in Dominion itself, when it's sort of tweaked with the expansions, it's not quite as directly aggressive. as Arctic Scavengers. So Arctic Scavengers sort of changed up. Arctic Scavengers has a completely different theme. You are scavengers in the next ice age.
Yes.
Looking for food, resources, weaponry, and people for your sort of post-apocalyptic settlement.
Yeah.
And rather than collecting victory points on cards that don't do a lot, you're collecting new members of your tribe, some of which don't do a lot. You can rescue refugee families.
Yeah.
But you can hire gangs of thugs, for instance, that have an effect in the game as well as
score new victory points as such.
Yes.
People are victory points in this game for the most part.
Yeah. Now, we actually talked quite a lot about Arctic Scavengers back in episode 6 of part 1. Back in the old days when we used to have double part or triple part episodes where we all had verbal diarrhea and didn't realise that you could edit podcasts and cut things down for simplicity's sake. We'll pop a link to episode 6 part 1 so you can have a listen. But Joe wasn't the critical twit back then.
No.
He was but a regular civilian. Yeah, so Joe, you talk about Arctic Scavengers because we've talked about it loads.
Yeah.
But I'm quite interested in your opinions, see if they mesh with ours.
I like Arctic Scavengers. Again, it's very similar to Dominion. You do things very similarly. I like the theme to it. The whole post-apocalyptic setting is appealing, and I like the PvP elements that it's got in there.
Yeah.
So because you will compete over resources and you can start disarming and sniping people and doing all this kind of stuff, it adds another level to the game where you're not just competing against the game itself.
Yeah.
And trying to create combos. You're doing that while other people are trying to get in your way.
Yes.
Yes.
Or you're getting in their way, which is something I know we pretty much all enjoy doing.
One of the reasons I used to quite like it is sometimes with these conflict games, when this happens, you can get stuck in a rut or feel like you can't compete back. Arctic Scavengers feel quite balanced, so even if you're not got quite a good gang to defend yourself, there's always someone else you can be going off doing to score points. If you can't win that way, there's avenues for you to explore rather than you being funneled down a particular route.
There's always a manipulation of probability in deck building games.
Yeah.
Like how many of these cards, what ratio of this card to that card do I need to have the best chance of drawing the hand that I want?
Yeah.
Or to be able to draw more cards and get what I need. Arctic Scavengers, I think, has sort of complicated that by having an extra phase to the game, the skirmish that happens at the end. What happens in a regular deck builder usually is you draw your hand, generally five cards. You will activate the abilities, use what you can, either purchase more cards or get some other reward somehow.
Remove waste from your deck.
Yeah, remove waste from your deck, or turn a card into a different card using an ability, or whatever it might be that you're doing, and then you're done. And any cards that don't quite fit, so say you've got those two cards that work really well together, but you've only drawn one of them, and it doesn't work particularly well on its own, it just kind of gets discarded at the end of your turn, and play moves on.
Yeah.
What Arctic Scavengers does is those cards that aren't used, or cards that you decide to keep back on purpose, go down, and they represent a raiding party from your tribe going off and having a skirmish over some important bit of tech or family that's turned up. One player knows what it is, because they get to peek. The other players don't, and quite often this brings in kind of an element to me of a different kind of game altogether. It brings in an element of sort of bluffing, of manipulation, of sort of table talk and trying to psych each other out.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of poker facing with the amount of cards you put down, whether they're any use or not, or whether you're just throwing 3 spears out into the middle of the waste and hoping that'll attract a family of raiders. Yeah,
because you didn't have anyone to use the spears and you haven't built an efficient machine, or you were just unlucky with your draws. So it's quite, to me, it brings in a whole other element, and I really like those kinds of games that let you directly influence, bluff, lie, cheat and steal from the people around the table. God, I sound like a terrible person.
Yeah, I completely agree. Adding in that extra, the skirmishing, is a really nice addition to the genre.
Yeah.
And it definitely it was definitely a piece that was missing from Dominion.
Yeah.
Because with Dominion, even when you're playing and messing with people, you're targeting one person, and one person, and one person. Whereas this, everybody has a moment where everyone's fighting each other.
Yeah.
And I like that.
There's more time at the table where you're interacting with each other.
Yeah.
The other thing I quite like that it does is you've got your selection of things you can buy. Generally, they're people to recruit.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But you can also go to the junkyard.
Mm-hmm.
A junkyard is a big stack of cards that are randomised, and you can go digging through the junk, and certain cards let you take more out of the junkyard.
Yeah.
So you might just send one person off, draw one card, and you decide whether or not to keep it, because you can just actually find junk, which is of no use. Or you could send 3 or 4 people or someone with a shovel. You take more than one card, look through, take the one that you want the most, keep it, and put the others on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I like that element of randomness. You never know exactly what other people have. The same when you win a skirmish, you take the card. Now, say I went first and I looked at the skirmish, I lose, and Joe wins. I know what he's got, but Aaron hasn't got a clue.
No.
And if I look at it, decide I want it, make sure I win the skirmish, no one knows what I've got until it comes up.
Yeah.
So there's sort of some secrets there, whereas I know people that are very good at Dominion will know exactly how many victory points everyone around the table has got. They know all the information because you buy your cards openly.
It's like blackjack versus poker. You know, blackjack, you can count all the cards if you're good at it and know exactly what's where at what time and know exactly what your probability is for winning sort of thing all the time. Whereas poker, there's always that risk somebody's got something you've not been able to see.
Yeah. Obviously, with randomness comes less control. I've had a couple of games of Arctic Scavengers where I've dug and I've dug and I've dug till my hands were bleeding and yet I could find no medicine. And so I found it really, really hard to recruit the harder to get better members of the tribe. But I like the secrets, and I like the bluffing, and I like the fact that, I don't know, Joe wins the skirmish, he shuffles his deck because he's at the end of it, he pulls out a card, he smiles, he puts it down, he laughs to himself, and you're going, is he bluffing me? Has he just pulled out a fire team, which is absolutely amazing, and will very much almost guarantee you they've got some stuff with them, whatever's next, or is he sending a bottle of pills off on its own to roll towards the encounter in the hope of attracting someone? Yeah.
No, you see, I think this is I guess it's a flaw almost of, well, it's not a flaw, it's just like you say, due to chance and everything. What tends to happen in these games, you get some games where, and I know this is a criticism you have of a lot of games, Brian, where you get into a death spiral.
Yes, death spiral games where you feel you can't win, that the other person's gained an advantage that you cannot get back from.
Because and you're or then them doing well is weakening you, and because you've been weakened you then can't claw your way back, etc. This does that, but the other way round, in that if you get the right cards at the right time you can rocket off to a massive lead. And it can make it very difficult for people to catch you up. If in one of your first skirmishes you draw that amazing card and then go, I've got this for every other round now, and I'm just going to keep smashing you in the face with it.
But there are ways round it.
Oh, there always are.
Because you can recruit cards that, like a sniper team, to knock out that particular character and things like that. But yeah, you're right that the death spiral thing
is I think it's more of a winning spiral than a death spiral. You don't find that I'm getting myself knocked out and eliminated from the game, because you don't have player elimination. But you do have someone that can just, I did really well, which means I got some more things, so I'm going to do better and better and better every turn, when certain people can be left behind.
What I do really like about Arctic Scavengers, just as a sort of final point, is that there are no useless cards. You can, if you're very unlucky, get a handful of stuff that doesn't particularly work well together, but you can still bluff. And if you put 5 cards into the skirmish and one of the other players doesn't, puts in lots of cards to fight that, and it turns out that you've sent loads of spears and a refugee off to fight, and you've got no chance of winning. But they've wasted good cards they could have done other things with. You have successfully bluffed them into having a suboptimal turn and doing not the best possible action. So you can still have an effect with that, depending on how you play
Especially if you know what's in the middle.
Yeah, whereas it's a bit like Dominion, you might draw a huge handful of victory points and just be like, I can't actually do anything this go, over to you, and you just kind of pass your turn.
Yeah.
Obviously, the better you get at the game, the less likely that is to happen, because you balance your deck as you build it. Yeah, so for a more detailed run through of Arctic Scavengers, have a look at episode 6 part 1. We're going to skip forward in time then to 2015 last year, and we're going to have a quick chat about the game Cthulhu Realms that I bought last week because we wanted to do a podcast on deck building games, so we thought we should get some more. And there was a specific I wanted to buy and play Mystic Vale, but as that's the newest game, we're saving that for last. But I thought something else, something small, something fairly cheap, something quick. Cthulhu Realms seemed to be a good sort of fit. Retails for 20 of your dollar monies. So in the UK, I think I picked it up for about £15, roughly. Quite a nice little compact game. It's 2 to 4 players and plays supposedly in 25 to 45 minutes. What did we find when we played?
Our first game was probably an hour and 15. But our second game was much quicker. So once you've played it once, I'd say 25 to 45 minutes, is that accurate?
So Cthulhu Realms then, as I said, quite a small fast-paced game that has a very, very direct player versus player mechanic. The idea is to drive your opponents mad by attacking them with abilities, monsters, characters, artifacts that reduce their sanity. I quite like this game, but I think you two aren't as keen on it. We've played 3 games.
I could take it or leave it, to be honest with you. Part of that's to do with the strict focus on combat, possibly. Because obviously there's the risk of player elimination. Even in a 25-30 minute game, if you knock somebody out halfway through, that's somebody bored for the half the game.
To be fair, that's a fairly new thing for deck builders. Most of them don't have player elimination in them.
No, which is one of the reasons I quite like deck builders, because you're always something for you to do, something for you to be involved with. We were playing it fairly egalitarian.
We were dividing our damage up between each other and such like, but you could just all pick on Jeff and knock Jeff out.
I could have eliminated you in that one game.
I'd been really sad, because the thing is, if there's 4 of you playing, you could pick on one person and get them knocked out within 10 minutes. But the game's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour with that many players. At which point, is that fun? Is that nice? Is that... No. But this is a problem with any kind of game with player elimination.
Oh, certainly, It's not something this is solely responsible for, if that makes sense.
I think it's on the longer side of games that feature player elimination. If there's a few of you. A lot of player elimination games that have player elimination in them don't last as long. So that no one's left sitting out for hours and hours at a time. I mean, I remember being 18, 19, 20, thinking that poker was quite a cool thing to do. Getting together with my friends, some of whom are here, some of whom are dead in a barrel.
Jesus, that was a heavy bet, wasn't it?
Yes, but don't fucking owe me money, Ravinsky. People get really excited about poker, ordering pizzas, getting some beer in, sitting around, putting some money in, and then getting knocked out, and it being 3 hours till we started playing poker again. to the point where we would have the Xbox on with Halo or something like that for people to go and play.
Yeah.
But then you're not playing poker. You're just having a Halo night because you're shit at poker.
Yeah,
because you're a gullible fool and fall for every bluff, or you get easily bored and go all in on everything.
Yeah.
It's odd. Player elimination to me, part of the reason I play games is to have fun with my friends, and it completely puts me off if one of them's not having fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's fun to pick on someone because that's what people do.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
might be a bit mean, like Colin would pick on Colin.
Yeah.
As the weakest member of the group.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not his fault that he didn't have any calcium growing up. But if you grab him at either end, you can twang him like a rubber band. It goes for miles. Anyway, so player elimination to me is a tricky thing. I think it's something that board games maybe have struggled with.
Yeah, because they're not generally quick.
To be fair, it's something that's so... I mean, they've clearly gone, we want to make a Cthulhu game based around madness, as a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And going crazy. But... To compare it, actually, to other similar games, if you look at Lantern, that we'll be doing a review of, and we've played some more of the playtest,
Yeah.
it will be really nice to have something like that, where once you are eliminated, you do something else.
Yes.
Because you're not part of the main group anymore, but you still have a chance to play and interfere and win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
a bit of player elimination can actually add a bit of spice to a game because it adds some stakes to what's going on.
Yeah.
If you mess up or if you don't play well, then you can actually lose. You can be out of the game. So it can. A lot of people quite like that. It adds something that you don't get from sitting around the table.
Yeah.
You can play more sort of desperate last minute gambits and things like that where you're trying to stave off the inevitable and try something crazy, whereas maybe in a game where everyone's still going to be playing, you just carry on plodding along and such like.
There are some elements I do like about it.
Yeah.
You don't notice this much in the 2-player game, but the 3 and 4-player games, you have different lanes essentially of buying. Your cards.
You can buy the cards. Each person, as you sit around the table, you're divided into sections by having a line of purchasable cards between each player.
Yeah.
So, as we were playing 3-player, there was a line between me and Aaron, a line between Aaron and Brian, and a line between me and Brian. And that allowed, so I could only buy the things next to me. So there's one lot of pit cards I can't buy.
Yeah. But you could still affect those cards by using some of the abilities. You could essentially banish some of those cards. As long as they were the cheaper cards, you could banish them. So you could go, well, I can't buy that, but I know that'll fit really nicely in Aaron's hand, so I'm going to eliminate that. Before he gets a chance to buy it.
Yeah, that was quite
for instance. That's quite good. I really like that. I think that's quite nice. Because normally in Deck Builder, you just have your shopping list, if you like, in the middle of the board that's available to everyone. This added a little bit of sort of variety, a little bit of jealousy. Like, they've got really nice stuff.
You've got the crazy man. I wanted the crazy man.
And then there's sort of tactical things as well. So I'm looking and going, well, I know Aaron's not going to want that, and Joe can't buy that. So I'll buy the thing I think Joe wants before he does, and I'll wait till my next turn and hopefully buy that one. And then Joe says it out loud, and Aaron screws him over anyway by banishing the deep ones you banished.
Deep ones,
the poor deep ones. You buried them even deeper.
Yes. There is one other aspect I'm not very happy with the game though. The order you do things with the cards is completely open. Essentially, you put all your cards in front of you and then do the stuff on them in order.
Which sounds like a really good thing, apart from in practice, it's very easy to get lost with what you're doing. I would much rather, because like you said, like Dominion, you go, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this to do this and draw a card, then I'm going to play this and it's going to do this, and then I'm going to play this and then that's going to happen. Rather than playing a card, activating it, completing it, moving on, you can play that and use one of its abilities, and then play this so you can access its second ability, and then you'll play that one, and then activate this, which then means you can activate these two things. And you know, you're playing with 5 cards, but
Yeah.
the amount of times we missed stuff because
Yeah.
you're getting confused, or you try and use something twice and everyone else has to
Yeah.
go, no, you've already done that.
Yeah.
It starts.
Which, if you're paying attention to your own deck,
Yeah.
in your own hand, and figuring out what you're going to do, means you can't then, you're not paying enough attention to catch things, and it's, I think, like you mentioned, Aaron, it's very open to abuse potentially.
It is if you've got a player who's particularly prone to excessive competition, I have to win no matter what, and admittedly you probably won't be playing with people like that, I would hope, because they're not very nice. But
There are entire gaming groups that play like that. I know a couple of groups
Yeah.
that have lots of those sorts of players in because they all enjoy the same thing.
yeah, it's very true. But you're just going to have rampant cheating all over the place because, like you said, you're trying to plan your turn, but they can't keep track of it. So how are you supposed to when they're the ones not putting out all their cards out in front of them necessarily straight away? It's really rampant and open for abuse.
Yeah, I think any kind of game like this where you've got this card does this, which then affects that, which then does this, that then does this, is open to that kind of thing. So I think the game's free-form nature sort of does open it up even more, because it starts off fairly simple. The cards you've got have 1 or 2 abilities on them. When you're getting towards the end game, you might lay out 5 cards, draw 2 more using an ability, have 7 cards in front of you, each of which has got 2 or 3 abilities on it, with various prerequisites. So you need to trigger things in order, and you can get a little bit lost in what you're doing. And I found what we were doing is we were sort of breaking it down into, right, I'm going to do all my healing abilities first and heal myself. Then I'm going to do all my sort of buying and purchasing bits, and then I'm going to allocate who I damage with my attacks, and then we kind of made our own little informal way of coping with that. I think the moment you say you have to do something in this order, then this order, and then this order, the game just wouldn't work. It would slow down. It would play very differently.
It loses some of its fluidity doing that.
Yeah.
Now, what I think this would work really nice as is a digital game.
Yeah.
Because it tracks it all for you. Or having, like, it would be ridiculous with the game as it is, but something to mark what you've used.
Yeah, just sort of put over the top of the markers.
But I wouldn't want more tokens because
then you get more confusing.
Well, no, it's not that. At the moment, you score your madness levels with a section of very small heads that are next to each other on a page because there's 55 of them.
Yeah.
And you move a little token around that's not very big or weighty, and there's been a couple of times where if you breathe too heavily it moves.
Yeah.
And that's another criticism I have. I don't like the way they do the scoring. I don't think there's necessarily a cheap enough better way of doing it for the price point the game's aiming at, but I'm not keen.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really have a problem with that. I liked the scoring. What I liked was it did feel a bit like a Call of Cthulhu style game, in that it's like, it reminds me of the role play game where you've got a sanity count and it goes down, it goes down. But it can go up, you can heal yourself. I liked the theme. I'm a big fan of Cthulhu and H.P. Lovecraft and that style of horror.
Same.
And I like the little nods and things that were in there. So you have the Necronomicon, you have the King in Yellow, you have the Deep Ones, you have Dagon, you have lots and lots of stuff in there that's from the mythos, if you like. So for me as a fan, maybe that was more appealing. Maybe I'm partly drawn to the theme more.
I do think the theme helps. Again, I think we're all fans of the theme.
Yeah, we are. Yeah,
and I like the art style used as well.
Definitely.
I think it's very nice. It's kind of almost a cutesy Cthulhu thing because it's kind of almost making fun of itself. It's not a bad game. I think if you're a really big Cthulhu fan like Brighton is, you'll quite happily get over the, what to be honest, are quite petty complaints we've got about it. There's nothing wrong with it. It works. It's balanced. It's good fun. It's just, I think deck builders have got to the point now, there's so many of them that it has to be pretty stunning to stand out.
I think that there's a few little nitty gritty bits in there. It felt very fast, especially at the beginning. It was like, I do this, I do a damage to you, and I do a damage to you, bang, 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 bang. You go around very, very quickly, which I liked.
For the first little while, and then the second half
it slowed a bit down.
Yeah,
it slowed down quite a bit towards the end
Yeah.
because you've got so many complicated abilities and such like.
It's like an ongoing D&D campaign. Towards the end, turns took forever.
Yes, you've got too many abilities.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
the instructions weren't great, to be honest.
No, they gave me a few headaches looking through.
I think if the instructions maybe just given an example, like we did, we broke them down, saying, you know, if you're struggling to keep track, do this. You could do this, this, and this, and give it a kind of.
Yeah.
A
It does say
turn
move a
example if you
card
need.
to the side when you're done with it.
Well,
But
it
quite
says-
often you're bouncing across.
This is it. It says you might want to move. Yeah, it says you might want to move a card to the side when you've used some or all of its abilities. But if I've put it over there and then I want to use another abilities, I'm still in the exact same position of trying to remember what I have and haven't used. So I don't think that becomes a solution in any way, to be honest.
Yeah, but I do think we got into that rhythm of sort of doing all of one type of thing.
Yeah.
Me buying things doesn't affect you guys, so I'll get that out of the way. Me healing myself doesn't affect you guys, I'll get that out of the way. And then we started going, right, then I do this to you, that to you, and I do these things.
Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing Cthulhu Realms. I'd quite happily play that more often. I'd play it again. I've played it 2-player and 3-player. I'd quite like to see how it plays 4-player.
Yeah. I think, if I'm honest, 2-player, because we played it 2-player, it wasn't very good.
No, it wasn't. I don't find any kind of deck building style games interesting 2-player because one person just tends to very quickly get ahead. It feels like that quite often.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it just seems.
No, I think that's fairly accurate.
I think it's the same with many board games 2-player, unless they've had that specifically designed in.
Yeah.
As soon as one player's slightly ahead on points or something else, the other player starts losing interest.
I think with like say playing Arctic Scavengers 2-player, someone will win the fight for the skirmish for the shiny thing. They'd then use the shiny thing to win the next one or the one after, and it would become very easy for them to start gobbling up everything.
That winner spiral that you
and I think
mentioned earlier.
Cthulhu Realms becomes very much like that when we played
that, again,
2-player.
it was that death spiral, wasn't it? That
Yeah.
I got a bit ahead, I got some protection down, and then went, I'm immune to all of your piddly bits of damage, while I could keep doing...
Keep niggling at me. And I couldn't get rid of your protection. Whereas, if there were more players, I could do my piddly bits of damage to someone else. You'd have to spread your damage about, potentially. It does change the feel. But yeah, I'd happily play quite a lot more of Darwin Castle's Cthulhu Realms.
I would happily play more. I just think...
But it's not going to be the first game you grab off the shelf.
No.
That's fair enough. Cool.
Before we jump into our final game,
Yeah.
I would like to make a mention of something that isn't something we're covering, that if people like deck builders, they should potentially look into.
Okay.
Me and Brian have recently played Thunderstone. We played the Numenera version,
Yes.
and that adds a couple of new elements in. You are fighting monsters in a dungeon rather than fighting each other, but it was just a nice different take.
It's a bit like having a role-play campaign, which is Numenera is a role-playing system.
It is.
So it was like having that kind of that fantasy. I mean, it's got some sciencey bits in. It's like a science fantasy.
Yeah.
But it was like having a fantasy role-playing game, but with cards, where you would recruit adventurers from the pub. You know, we all met in a pub, and there was a notice that said bounty on this monster. And we went and we fought the monster, and we came back, and we were better at fighting. And you kind of level characters up by trading in cards for higher card versions. You buy equipment. You can hire mercenaries to go in with you, so like having like followers for your group, and it had that kind of feel to it. It was a fun game. I quite enjoyed it.
I like the fact you have a dungeon that has level 1, 2 and 3. The further in the dungeon you get, the darker it is, so the more powerful the monsters are. That was quite cool.
Unless you took enough light with you, but then the light cards aren't doing a lot else. It could be really useful.
So as an honourable mention, If people like that kind of thing and are into their fantasy roleplay type stuff, or just the Numenera setting, and you like deck builders, I would definitely recommend you go and check that out. I had a lot of fun playing it, and that's something I'd quite happily play again.
Yeah, cool. That one had no direct player conflict.
No, but it did feel like we were trying to do things like, oh well, I reckon I've seen what you've got, you can probably kill that, so I'm going to try and kill that one instead.
Yes.
So it wasn't direct conflict, but there was more.
There's a lot of passive aggressive. He's got a lot of strong fighters, so I'm going to buy up all the next level of strong before he can level them up.
Yeah. It was interesting. I very much enjoyed it. It's a step up from Dominion, but probably not quite as much as Arctic Scavengers.
Okay.
Nice mid-level thing. So
I think it's as developed as Arctic Scavengers, but in a different direction.
Yeah, it's less PvP focused.
Yes,
but it's still a nice. If say for you and your wife wanted something a bit of a step up from Dominion, and you're not into the conflict that Arctic Scavengers brings, Thunderstone is a nice way to look at it. And I believe the one we played is just a reskin of the normal one. I think it was just the Numenera flavoured Thunderstone, from what we were told.
Yes.
Cool.
So
anyway, on to the star of the show.
So Mystic Vale, which I've been eagerly looking forward to get my hands on ever since I first heard about it. Mystic Vale, you play a druid. You play kind of a clan of druids.
Sect.
Yeah, sect. a division of druids.
Cult.
A dark deicidal division of deep
tribe.
I ran out of D's.
So what are we doing with our sects of druids?
So in sex of druids, you have to hold them up, lift up
their gowns, robes, yes.
And possibly long beardy hairs, just to get everything out of the way.
Well, hopefully if they've got a giant beard, they're male.
Well, not necessarily.
All druids grow beards, little known fact.
Yep. Oh, they're like dwarves.
Yes.
Cool. Excellent.
It's something to do with the big stones they stand in.
Yeah. It's protecting them from the thicket bushes they have to hang around in.
Yes.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Tiny woodland creatures live in them.
Yes. So, Mystic Vale, you play a sect of druids, and your cards represent the land. The land has been cursed, it's been damaged and ruined. So you have 20 cards. Now, for a deck builder, that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
Normally you start with about 10. However, you will end the game with 20 cards.
Yes.
So, Brian, I hear you cry across time and space and the internet.
So, Brian!
How do you build a deck? That's what I was hoping you'd say next.
You just said I'd shout "So, Brian."
I thought I left a hanging pause, which would actually be my druidic name, were I a druid.
So, Brian, how do you then progress in a game where you're not buying cards?
So, each of the cards has 3 sections to it.
Yeah.
And when you buy your upgrades, when you buy... Some of them might be creatures, some of them might be alterations to the landscape. You take the card with the ability on, which is printed onto see-through plastic.
Yes.
Apart from one of those 3 slots, which is covered with the upgrade itself, and you slot it in, so the cards are inside deck protectors. You've got a little plastic wallet that holds each card. You slot that in, and so you build your own cards. You don't add more cards to your deck.
You upgrade the cards you already have.
Yes, you modify and change the cards that you have, and I really like that. I quite like stuff that's different and quirky mechanically.
If anyone listening has played Gloom,
yes,
it's very similar. You're stacking things on top of each other to do different effects.
Yeah. And I'm surprised there haven't been more of that. I've seen it in a couple of other games, but I'm surprised there hasn't been more made of that kind of game.
There is a, I believe it's called Redakai, that's a Magic the Gathering style game where you do that. You play buffs and debuffs on top of yours and your opponent's cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really cool idea. The big failing I think that has, if you go to a tournament and me and you are playing against each other, Aaron and I go, cool, I put this on there, this on there, this on there. At the end of it, I then go, which ones were mine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're, it doesn't work in games like that. Self-contained things like Mystic Vale, it's awesome.
Yes.
But I think that might be a problem as well. I
Yeah.
suppose in self-contained games, no, it should be utilised more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that AEG that make it
Yeah.
are going to be making more games using this system.
Yeah, they
because
called it their card crafting system.
and this is the first of their games to use. Now, because they've said it's the first of their games, it hopefully means more will appear.
I hope so.
And not
Yeah.
just be reskins of this.
I got really excited when another company did this. Dead of Winter by Plaid Hat did Crossroads game.
Yes.
And they did Dead of Winter, and I love Dead of Winter, and we talked about it a lot in again in our post-apocalyptic special. And yeah, it's Dead of Winter is probably one of my favourite games ever.
Yeah.
And they were like a Crossroads game, thus indicating there would be other Crossroads games, and there are now.
Yay!
There is another version of Dead of Winter.
Oh.
Is it called Life of Summer? Mist of
Oh, you're easily
Spring?
amused.
Fall of Autumn?
A Fall of Autumn is. If you're American, that's just Autumn of Autumn. In fact, it's Autumn of something because they don't know what autumn is. Because they call it fall because the leaves fall down.
Simpletons
That's what
aside,
they call spring up growy time. And the summer's just called hot. What you doing during
fall,
hot?
snow, and
Yeah.
babies.
Although they do have spring break, which is the break that they have from school in spring.
Yeah, we have the summer holidays though, so we can't really slag that off a lot because
Summer holidays just sounds a bit more. It's a holiday, it's not a break.
Right, is that just because that's what we're used to, Brian?
Oh, now you're getting into cultural relativism.
Yes. In a hope to steer back towards the mystic
Yes.
land of druids.
So, speaking of Marxism, yes, just to whinge about there not being more Crossroads games because I think it's a great mechanic.
As
Yeah.
is this.
Yeah, and I really like the way they've kind of taken something that exists, the deck builder, and they've done something different with it.
they've
Now,
turned it into a more literal deck builder because you're actually constructing cards.
It's a deck builder and a card builder.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a case of going, that would be really good in my deck. It's a case of, that'd be really good in my deck. Do I currently have a card it fits in? Because you can't buy it and add it to something that you don't currently have.
Yeah.
So all my middle slots are used. That really cool thing I can buy.
I can't
go
actually
in
buy
anywhere.
it. Yeah.
You also have they use a nice system of decay and growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea is, when you first start, you flip over. Actually, I'll quickly hand over to Brian for what comes in your. What do you get that's basic in your 20 cards?
You've got 9 cursed land cards, 3 where the cursed land fills up the bottom slot, 3 where it fills up the middle slot, and 3 where it fills up the top. You've got 3 fertile soils, 1 for each level, and you have 8 completely blank cards with nothing on them.
Yeah.
And what you do at the start of, you've got to do it at the end of your turn so you can prepare. Is you reveal cards and you keep putting more cards down next to each other until you've got 3 decay revealed.
Yeah.
And that generally will be 3 separate cards with decay on, although if you build your cards in a certain way you could end up with more than 1
Yeah.
decay on a single card. You generally don't want that. It's quite odd because you have what they call your on deck card, which you flip over rather than putting the card into the field, which is where everything is sort of growing, and it's got this kind of feel of sort of what's going to grow in this season or this year. Right, this year, these are what's developing. This is what's growing. You could put one on top of your deck. So it's not actually in the field.
No.
So you'll start your go generally with a bunch of cards across the middle. It'll have a different number of mana. Later on, it'll have different abilities or characters or creatures or whatever in there. And then you'll have a card on the top of your deck that is what they're going to plant next if they want to risk decaying their land more. So you've got a push your luck mechanic. You can take that card, put it at the end, and then flip another card over to be your on deck card. But if that also has a decay on it, then you have completely ruined. You've done too much. You've ruined the land, and you scrap everything, and you miss your go.
Yes.
Now you do get an extra mana to spend.
You flip over a token. That each player has a single token.
Yeah.
You flip it over, and you can then use that in later turns as an extra mana. So,
So
if it's a case of I can't buy anything right now, but if I got that extra mana, I could. I'm going to push my luck. You're not always necessarily risking everything to do this, and it's a nice way of them being able to think. Because I did it quite a lot of going, I'll push my luck now because it's an early turn, and I want that 3 cost, but I've only got 2 mana. So if I don't get it, I'm almost guaranteed to get it later.
Yeah, and it adds a new mechanic in that you don't normally see in deck builders. This idea of sort of pushing your luck and sort of seeing what you can get away with. And there's cards that bounce off of that. So you might have a particular type of character that goes, if you're going to spoil. So you're going to spoil the season by flipping another decay. You can actually discard that and try again and see if you can get away with it. You've got cards that let you search your deck and discard things. So you might look through for one of your cursed lands and discard it, shuffle your deck again, and then you're less likely to draw it.
Or you have cards that allow you to discard one that you've already put into your field. Which is, again, quite a nice little mechanic.
Yeah, so you draw it later on, you go, right, I'm going to go back through the field, I'm going to take out that cursed land.
And hope to get something better.
And what I really like is, because it's a game about growing and developing your land and developing, you start off with lots of blank slates. It's quite weird, actually. When we first played, I was like, am I playing this right? Because I'm just flicking over lots of empty cards. This is really strange. And I had, like, my first ever hand in this game, I had, like, 8 cards in front of me, and I'm like, have I done this right? It feels really weird. But you sort of soon get used to that, and you start building onto those things. So you've got those blank slates because you're gonna grab something, slot it in, move on. You can buy a couple things a turn as well, so you can quite quickly start to develop. You might spot a combo, so you might spot, okay, I'm going to buy that monster that's going to give me lots of victory points each turn it comes up, but it has more decay in it. So I'm also going to buy this other little card that will slot into the opposite side of the card and counteract the decay that monster's generating, meaning that card's not a negative. One thing I was doing a lot is my decay cards that I started with in my deck, I was looking for the things that were available to buy that I could slot in with it to neutralise that. So, and in my mind, that feels like you're the druids, you're looking and going, something terrible's happened here, right? Let's replant, let's build, let's cultivate this land and undo the damage. So it feels like you're developing an area of land. In my mind, each card represents a different area of your, I was going to say kingdom, but your
territory,
your dominion, your druidic dominion, your territory,
your mystic Vale,
your mystic Vale. That sounds a bit like something 70s hippies would refer to.
No, it doesn't. Stop. I mean, where you've mentioned that you were looking to try and neutralise the decay that was in there. I was trying. That's not an approach I took. I tried to either concentrate my decay and neutralise it with a card, but there's different levels of cards that do it in different ways. There are cards that take all but 1 decay off a card, there are cards that take all of them, there is one that takes away 1 decay but also 1 mana, which I noticed you two used, and in the games we've played I didn't buy a single one of those because I looked at that as a really bad economy. So I took more of a let's make a few really good cards to get to and just try and ignore the ones that have got decay on and hope they don't turn up too much.
I found in the second game I was playing that making the decay cards much better just by adding more mana through the fertilised lands meant that, okay, well, I might have only drawn 3 cards, 2 cards, because they're all, but there's loads of mana on there.
Yeah, because they're the blocks. As you're revealing your cards, you could reveal, in theory, if you get your hand right, you could reveal every single one of your 20 cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
every turn if you've built it correctly.
Yeah.
Now,
Probably wouldn't be much of the game left at that point, because once all the victory points have been claimed from the centre of the table, the game ends.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I do want to bring up, because I don't think we've mentioned this yet. Most deck builders, like we've said before, have your shopping list, as it were, in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, what this does is this takes the way that Thunderstone did dungeons, actually. And so you have your level 1, your level 2, your level 3 upgrades in the middle, and you put 3 of each out.
Yeah.
So 3 level 1s, 3 level 2s, 3 level 3s. And as they're bought, they get replaced by random ones off the deck.
Yeah.
Now this
Yeah.
means that I might go, I really want that, and then Brian buys it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I then have to reassess my plan, which
Yeah.
I quite like.
Whereas in something like Dominion, you've got the set list that you've dealt out at the beginning, you work out the puzzle and your approach, and then you kind of just play that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this had quite
This
a
is-
nice, again, it's nice fluidity to it.
It changes, yeah. You've got to kind of adjust your plans on the fly because someone's bought what you wanted,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I like games like that
Yes,
that
definitely.
change.
Now, one of the other sort of cards we've not mentioned as well is you have your mana, which you use to buy these upgrades to upgrade your cards. Another thing you also generate is you generate energy.
Yes.
So there are 3 or 4 types of energy. There is the claws, so the animal side of things, the sun, the plants.
Yes.
And I believe that's everything. And then you've got wild card as
Yes.
well. You use these to buy Vales. So you might buy a sunlit pond, or the Ent Elders, I believe, was another
Yeah.
one.
Council events, was it? Or-
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Some Lord of the Ringsy Tolkien thing.
And these are mostly victory points, but a lot of them have effects like get a wild card energy every turn,
Yeah.
gain 2 mana every turn.
Yeah.
And so while there are cards you can buy and upgrades that give you bonuses and your victory points that you need to win, Veils do seem to be a very key mechanic.
Yeah.
And you can buy 2 upgrades and 2 Veils every turn.
Yeah.
So there's 2 separate shopping lists getting generated by different resources as the game progresses, and you can just focus on one, or you can try and split.
What did you guys think then? Because I was attracted to it by the new mechanic, the slotting the different plastic cards in.
Which I loved.
But these sorts of things, they can either be like a brand new evolution or a brand new style of game, like the deck builder itself was. Like the idea of having a hidden betrayer in a game was, when that was like a brand new thing.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar Galactica
Yeah.
and Shadows of Camelot in sort of first games to do that sort of thing popularly. Or was it just a gimmick? Because it could just be, oh, they've had this really cool idea, but it doesn't work.
It feels somewhere down the middle to me.
Yeah.
It's not quite innovative enough to go, right, every game from now on has to do this because it's amazing, or it's just a new side of things.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it as a mechanic.
Yeah.
I would like to see it implemented more, but I don't think it's going to have the same kind of cascading effect that Dominion had on deck builders kind of thing. It is really interesting, and it does make you approach a game a little bit differently,
Yeah.
which is fun.
I think it's amazing. I love Mystic Vale.
Yeah, I do.
I have enjoyed that more than most deck builders I've played.
Yeah.
Mostly because I really like the mechanic of building your own cards.
Yeah.
The number of combinations there is
It's phenomenal.
it's
It's absolutely
staggering.
amazing.
It is, yeah.
And to see people approaching it in different ways, and because it's not just because you have Dominion, and it is very obviously that works with this, it works with this, it works with this, and so that's
There is a solution to the puzzle.
Yeah, and you might find 2 different solutions that you think might work.
Yeah.
But I think that Mystic Vale offers you a lot more potential solutions to any of the puzzles it's asking, the questions it's asking, and I like that. I think that this isn't, again, I agree with Aaron, it's not something that's going to feature in every game, but I'd be very, very interested to see what they're going to do with it in the future, and it will
definitely.
be something that pulls me towards looking at their games more seriously if I
Yeah.
see it's got this involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it, but I feel it does suffer again from a lack of player interaction.
It's a very passive game.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of look and go, oh, I'm going to buy that before someone else gets it, or that's the most obviously the best Vale to try and buy at the beginning of the game, and let's buy this and this. But I like a game with a bit more interaction. So that's why for me, I've enjoyed playing Arctic Scavengers and Cthulhu Realms more than Mystic Vale. I like the fact they've done something new and something different with it, and that's really interesting. Now, if they can get that into something with a competitive aspect, then I will throw my money at them.
Yeah, I think that it might even be an expansion or something they work on. But one of the things that I do find interesting about Mystic Vale, it's very open as a system.
Yeah.
There isn't any, this is my hand, this is what I'm doing. You lay your field out in front of you.
Yeah.
There's no hiddenness to it.
Yeah.
In the same way that I very much enjoy Dice Masters over things like Magic the Gathering, because again, you're not hiding anything at any point.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily bluffing, which I love bluffing games.
Yeah.
But in things like this, I like the fact that you don't have to mess around with that. You have your cards in front of you.
Yeah.
Now, most of the time we were finding we weren't going, so you've got this. What you're doing
Well, I'm
there?
going to go for that instead, yeah.
But you could look over and go, you've got lots of mana symbols, you're going to have a big turn. You've not got so many, so if you don't buy the card I want, you're probably not going to be able to. So I'm probably going to get that. And it allows you to plan a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I very much liked that side of things.
Yeah, I did. I found it... I think, like with Cthulhu Realm stuff, like competitively, but probably felt a bit more engaging.
Yeah.
Mechanically, this felt far more satisfying.
Oh, yes.
You know, I felt more rewarded for going, this does this, does this, does this.
You feel like you're being that extra little bit of clever because you're putting the things together and then by chance drawing the ones that all, and you go, I've just used 12 of my cards and got all the stuff and bought this thing.
Yeah. The thing I like the most about Mystic Vale is being able to push your luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't see that very often in this kind of game. I can't think of any other deck building game with a push your luck mechanic. I'm sure people will contact us and let us know the 17 games that do so that I've missed. But I like that. I liked being able to go, right, I've got 6 mana and I really want that 7. Is it worth pushing? Right, I know I've got 20 cards. I used 6 last time. I've used that many curse cards, right? And you're trying to sort of manipulate probability. That's why I liked neutralising the decay.
Yeah.
Because it then, for me,
I mean, you could push your luck more.
I could push my luck more.
Yeah.
I was manipulating the probability of the game.
Yeah.
And not necessarily just by buying more of a certain type of card, but by combining the different components in an interesting way.
Yeah.
Making the choices. And I did like that. But after playing a couple games of it, I was kind of like, I've been in the same room as my friends for 2 hours and we haven't really talked about anything because we're all looking at what we're doing.
Is that just because we're learning the game, though?
Yeah.
I found the first game of Cthulhu Realms we played, there was lots of
It
between
was
yourselves. Whereas the second time round, it's but he's look, Brian, he's doing this, and look, this is going on.
I think because Mystic Vale is more complicated, if you're going to get to the point where you're comfortable sort of making your decisions and chatting and knowing what you're doing, it's going to take longer to get there.
It's much more
games because it has the potential to be very complex. The systems aren't complicated, but there's a lot of depth to them.
Yeah.
But the game being how it is, there is also a lot of combinations and replayability in there because you're very rarely going to get the same thing happen twice.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I like about doing this podcast and talking about games in the way we do and getting quite deep into looking at them, we're going to do a review of Mystic Vale.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It'll be our next video review, I think, because I think there's so much to say about it that we kind of want to sit down and show people rather than just talk about it on a podcast. Actually sort of show it in action and that kind of thing. But one of the things I really like about doing this is that different people play games for different reasons. Different people get different things out of games, and different people find different things satisfying within a game. And it's quite interesting. It's opened my eyes to different kind of play styles or different people's points of view, having sort of sat down and you're going, I like it because of this and this, and I'm going, well, that's exactly why I didn't like it, for instance, on different things. And so obviously when we come to talking about a game, I think it's good that we've got 3 different voices.
Yeah.
We've got areas that we agree on.
Oh yeah.
Well, otherwise we'd never be able to play any games together at all. But it's interesting, hopefully for you people listening at home or in the car, upside down on a bus, wherever it is you might be, in the woods, lost and alone.
Well, I'm not alone. They'll have us to listen to.
Everyone's alone.
To distract them from the murders.
But yeah, is that I'm not like massively excited. I will play Mystic Vale again, and I'll be interested, but I won't want to play it 3 or 4 times in a row. But you might be going, that sounds amazing. So hopefully we've given you enough information to make your own mind up.
I probably would play it repeatedly, actually, quite happily.
Yeah. Hopefully that's given you sort of some knowledge of the genre as a whole, bit of a history to it, and a bit of an overview of some of the games within there. If you've got a particular favourite deck builder that you think we should play, especially given our disagreements in our individual taste and the way we look at things, if you think there's something that we'd all massively jump on, that could be quite interesting. Or if you want to give Aaron something to play away from us or anything like that, or something I can play with other equally horrible people that just like to be really mean to each other and lie, that'd be great. Then please let us know. So thank you very much for listening. I've been Brian Ennis.
I've been Aaron Vinsky.
And I've been Joe Lewin.
We have been the Critical Twits. We look forward to hearing from you. Bye.